All right, everybody, welcome to Dom's Den. I got Brian Koppelman here. You guys know him, creator of the hit show Billions, movies like Rounders, Knockaround Guys, Ocean's 13. Brian, what I want to get into, what your career before writing music in college, that experience, how did that happen with
Well,
Tracy?
first of all, Dom, I'm so happy to be talking to you. You know, man, I think the world of you, as you know, and I just think you're such a talented guy and such a good dude. And so, you know, as we talked about a lot, I think that your work is really just stellar, and I love talking to artists who operate at such a high level. So I'm thrilled to be here, and that ties in, I think, to it, because from when I was very young, I was always really interested and compelled by people whose work moved me, and that's like some people, like I guess many people, it was a slower awakening for me that I could do artistic work myself, but I always wanted to be engaged in the arts in some way. I loved music growing up. My father was in the music business, so I was around recording studios a lot. I was aware of what that life was, music, not the rest of show business. I didn't really understand at all, but I understood how the business of music worked. I really understood how records were made from a very, very, very young age, where I would go with my dad to the recording studio when I was 6, 7 years old. He would sit me on a couch and I would just hang out while they were making records. And, so I'd done that for 5 years on and off. By the time I was even like 11 or 12, I could participate. I would understand what was happening in a mix. And sometimes guys would ask me, for fresh ears on something. So I was around it. And I guess I always figured that that's what I would do for my life. I was a record collector. I was weird in one way in that I loved sports and I loved the arts. So I would, play on the sports teams, but I was reading all the time. I'd bring a book to basketball practice, which was a weird thing to do, or on the bus to road games. You know what I mean? I would have books with me, which is odd. And now it sounds kind of eclectic and cool, but honestly, back then that wasn't really considered cool or like something that anyone else wanted to do. You were just considered very strange. And in college, I sort of became aware, and this is a way to loop around to it. I guess in high school, I managed some local bands and I promoted concerts. Just industrious, like just being kind of industrious, but more than that, I just liked being part of it. But in college, as so many of our generation did, I became aware of a lot of issues of unfairness around the world. And in helping to organize a boycott of classes in protest against apartheid, the schools then were investing their endowments in companies that were doing business in South Africa during apartheid. And we were trying to get our college to divest. As part of that, I organized an event with a few other people, and in trying to get people to come perform at that event, which was an all-campus boycott of classes, I went to see Tracy Chapman. My friend Peter told me she was a great folk singer around campus, and when I saw Tracy, kind of all of my interests came together. And I suggested to her that she come play this, but then that we worked together and I produced her demos. And then along with my dad, helped get her signed and got to make that first album that had Fast Car on it. And so that led to me being in the music business, which was a great thing. As a young person, I was a heavy metal fanatic. I collected heavy metal records. I would go to every metal concert. I would get to know the people in the bands and their managers. So when I got into the record business, although by then my tastes had shifted to Bob Dylan, REM, Tracy Chapman, Joan Armatrading type stuff, I was still very connected to that world. So I got to work with, I didn't sign these bands, I got to work with Metallica and I got to work with Motley Crue and Faster Pussycat, and I got to do all this incredible metal church. I did do all this stuff in the heavy metal world, while at the same time working on the kind of artists that I was sort of more presently engaged with. But I mean, Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time, and getting to work with them was an incredible thing. And the crew meant so much to me as a kid that working with them was amazing too. And I was around them when they were making the Dr. Feelgood album. But all that time, Dom, I had this sense that I was doing the wrong thing, that I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. All my friends were writers. The songwriters were the people I was really drawn to in the music game. My favorite part was talking to them about their songs, suggesting a way they could fix the chorus or that they could rearrange a part of it. But something made me feel like, well, I'm not special. I'm not the kind of person who can actually be the artist. And then when my first kid was born, 29, about to turn 30, and that's when I really had the crisis of, I'm doing a job everybody would wish they could do, but I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. I don't think I can be a good father. I want to be the kind of dad who will tell his kids, chase your dreams, but I was not chasing my dream. And I knew deep down I had to be the one doing the thing. But, and this is the torture of being a frustrated artist, and a specific torture was I had never in my life up to that age, and I'd gone to law school at night and written a million papers. I'd never turned in a paper less than a month late. I have terrible ADHD. So I wanted to be a writer, but I could never fucking write anything. And so it felt very fraudulent and very difficult, you know? And, but finally I kind of found tools to help me. You know, I have a great partner, my wife, who always said, like, you're supposed to be doing this other stuff. My best friend, Dave, who, as you know, is my creative partner and my whole life. And he gave me, thank you. He gave me The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I started doing morning pages. And as soon as I started doing morning pages, kind of all my excuses for why I wasn't writing fell away. And then I started writing every day, and I started just figuring out how, despite the really bad ADHD, I could somehow get the work done. And that, through that, David and I ended up writing our first script.
Wow.
See, I could completely sympathize with that, because I'm kind of at a crossroad where I've been acting for such a long time, and I find myself on sets. I don't go to my trailer. I don't disappear. And I just visualize how I would shoot something.
Sure.
And it happens, and it's been happening more and more and more. Unlike you, I haven't pulled that trigger yet. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should collect some sort of material, try to raise some money, go out and film something.
Well, you definitely should direct. So it's funny, as an actor, you clearly have such an instinct of a storyteller. I was watching a scene of yours this morning. We were mixing an episode you're in of Billions. And I thought, you're, and you and I have talked about this, because of the parts you often get to play, and because of how you sound, where you grew up, it's very easy to not understand the sort of sophistication of what you're doing as a performer. But your understanding of every beat of the scenes you play is a filmmaker's understanding. And that's why you require very little direction. You take direction, great, but you don't require a lot of direction. And I totally understand how you're a filmmaker. Yeah, you got to find the piece of material and shoot something so that people give you a chance to then direct, for sure.
I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Brian wrote that monologue for me that I put up last summer.
Is that the one that Vincent helped you with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually called Vincent D'Onofrio when you wrote that for me, and I did it for Vincent first.
Right.
And I'm like, well, if Vincent gives me the okay, then I really don't care, And then my second thing was making bringing those words to life the way Brian had intended on writing them. And I was like, Brian, are you cool with this? I was like, are you cool with me posting this? And and
I thought that was great.
No one ever did that for me. It's not. Brian just sent it to me. And what was amazing is we had talked before But there were things in that monologue that we have never discussed before.
Right. Yeah.
He knew what I keep inside.
But yeah, that's the thing that I do. But that's what I do. Like that's what I do. You know, that's what I do. That's what you. I mean, that's if you're. I mean, look, that's what actors do, right? You study people and you try. And it's not conscious. Like this is the weirdest part of all that. I hadn't like sat down. Right. What happened was Vincent asked me to write him a monologue, and I wrote him a monologue, and it was so much fun. This was at the beginning of COVID. Vincent was like, "Will you write a monologue for me?" And I've spent a lot of my life thinking about Vincent and his work, and I've known him not well, but the amount of respect I have for Vincent, and I've known him on and off for 20, over. Yeah, sure. I can't see it, but because of my thing. Okay. But hold on, what's there? Right. I see it now.
His book, yeah.
So I wrote him the monologue, and it was great. And we did another one. And then, when you and I were talking one day and you said, would you ever do a monologue like that for me? And I was like, I know just what to do. And I was like, yes. But then I didn't put a lot of thought ahead of time. It's just that the way I go through life is while I'm as actors, while I'm in a conversation, I'm not consciously doing this. But it's part of why you become a writer, I think. I'm just aware of what's going on in the conversation on a bunch of different levels. I just have always been. That's just how I go through life. I'm aware we're having a conversation, but I'm aware of what's happening in the subtext of the conversation. Absolutely. And then where that shows up is in the writing. I don't walk away and then take notes anymore or go like, well, but it's just somewhere in my fucking mind.
Yeah.
And then, it's part of why sometimes I'm like lost in the clouds or whatever. It's in my mind so that when I started to think about you and I wrote whatever the first line was, I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what this is. And I could just write it. And then you rewrite, I was able to write it and I knew. I will say that's one of those times I was like, oh, this is what's going on in this fucking guy's head. And then I just wrote it a couple, then you go through it. Then the craft is, and the same as an actor, right, Dom? As an actor, you think about what it is, you say the words, you go through whatever your process is, you get loose. But then there's a moment where the artistic impulse, the purity, and then the awareness of the craft, those things come together. So you write a first draft, you then, if you're a professional, you set it down for a minute, walk away, 2 hours later, it depends on the time, next day, you look at it and you go like, that line feels fake, or that line's not funny enough, whatever. And that's the best part, right? Because now you've done the piece that's very pure, and then you can just, with the other part of your brain that's sort of the real professional crafts person, you can dive in and tweak it. And it's the same way an actor can. I remember I was on a set with Malkovich once, and he was doing his thing, and he looked at me and he was like, are we on are we about here? Are we here? And he was like, are you guys on a 35? Are you on a 75? You're like this, right? And he knew he was able to do this, and he got the exact frame line. What I'm doing, he got the exact frame line right. He knew what the top and bottom of the frame were. When a guy shouted to him what lens he was on, he was 100 feet away, but he knew what the frame was, Right. And he's like, okay, good, because I can. And later he was like, yeah, once I knew that, I knew, well, if I'm going to move my hand, I'm going to put my hand where you can see it, or I'm intentionally not going to put it where I can see it. That's where the craft, that's where you're marrying, right, the purely artistic impulse with the professionalism and the craft of being able to deliver. And it's constantly trying to make all that stuff happen, I think. I don't know if that's how you work, but I think it must be on some level. Maybe not the lens, maybe not the specificity of the lens.
No, it is actually, because that's why I'll always go look at the camera, and I'll always look to see where that dial is. For the reason, because the closer the camera is, the less I'm going to do.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
The farther it is, I could play more, but the closer it is, I need to convey everything more clearly by this.
Yep.
As opposed to this, as opposed to this. I don't want to be moving around. I don't want to. I have somewhat of a locked eye line, so to speak.
Well, and it's true that in fact,
and it makes things
really
easier
only
for
want
you.
to do when you're that close is really you just want to think, right? You just want to allow it to be as real and as small, because that's what it's amazing when your camera's in close, how much you can communicate with the littlest movements.
Yeah, that setup, and I would think from a direct. Then again, I'm not in an editing room. You're in a bunch of editing rooms, and when you do that shot, it's not for the whole scene. It's just for these certain moments where you want to cut into. You need that.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing the scene, that's why I like to know, because I want to make sure that when the director or the editor, they have what they want. Oh, he raised his fucking hand, he's blocking his face, or something like that. It happens.
Yeah, and it's hard to be aware of it. I mean, I remember when I was in Michael Clayton, just knowing, and I've been on a million sets by then, made so much stuff, and I have to act in that. And, I'd acted all through high school and in college, but still, the first time you're on a movie set and there's a camera in your face, and I'm a lifelong degenerate poker player, and they have me play, that's why they use me to play poker.
You got some buddies in here.
Yeah, that's why I'm in there to play poker, right? And still, I am, and I'll say this is what was funny. This is why acting is so hard and why it was amazing to me. There's almost no place in the world I feel more comfortable than when I sit down into my seat at a poker table. I have a Hold'em table. Omaha's a totally different thing. But when I sit down to play Hold'em, I have total and complete comfort. I may not win. I may not be the best player at the table, but I am as comfortable as I can be in understanding what it is that we are doing. I know everything about text. I've read 200 books. I've played thousands of hours, right? Every part of that is natural and comfortable to me. I'm there to play poker. It's Omaha, but still it's close enough. In this movie, there's a camera on me, and suddenly the chips were like the strangest, weirdest things I'd ever held, Tom. Like, because there's a camera and I got to say these words. I mean, chips, I can riffle with these guys play. I can riffle with both hands. I can riffle huge stacks. It's the most without even thinking about it. And suddenly, because George Clooney's looking at me and there's a camera, I'm like, how do I cut the checks? How do I look at my cards? How does somebody look at their cards? Do you look at your cards like this? Do you lift them? Suddenly I almost do the movie thing of lifting my cards up like some kind of fish. Because I completely forgot that I just got to sit there and play poker. And so it is so hard for what you guys do is just so difficult to be natural. And that's why even if acting can't really be taught, right? I'm not somebody who thinks a lot of this stuff can be taught, but becoming comfortable in your own skin, you got to learn it some way. It might as well be in a class so that you can just be yourself when the fucking camera's turned on. Mm-hmm. And so that when you're got to riffle the checks, you know how, because it's just what you do. But it is weird. You become Ricky Bobby, not knowing what to do with your hands.
What do I do with my hands?
I'm most comfortable. It's kind of the opposite for me. I'm very uncomfortable in social gatherings. Horrible. Horrible. But when I'm in front of a camera, I've said this before. It's like my therapy.
Right.
In a weird way, Brian. It's like my therapy. It's where I'm able to do things that I normally have reservations about in my personal life. For instance, crying. People who know me my whole life have probably never seen me cry.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You write a scene, I kind of wish, because it's so much buildup.
You want to get it out.
I want to get it out. It's weird. And only I really understand it. And,
of course.
You tell people like, oh, you're crazy, you cry. I'm like, no. I did this the scene in Mrs. Fletcher where my dad, the guy, Bill Raymond, who played my dad, and I'm giving this eulogy. The piece of shit son, I was no good. He was a great man. I shot this scene 6 months before my actual dad passed away.
I'm sorry, and yeah.
And people thought I used my real dad's experience to do that scene. When it happened, when I actually shot that scene 6 months before my dad died. And when my dad died, nothing.
No crying.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Don't get me wrong. you know.
No, I know you're talking about no moment of you didn't give yourself the gift of that catharsis in real life. You didn't give yourself the gift of having.
I didn't have time
release.
to mourn him.
I understand that.
I did it. I just
but you didn't
that
give
scene.
yourself.
I was able to do it because who knows how long I held those emotions in before that.
Of course, man. That makes total sense to me. I mean, look, it's the same thing with any kind of a performing, someone comfortable with performance. Like, so what finally happened on Michael Clayton was I realized, wait, it's not my problem. Tony cast me. It's on him. If I suck, it's not on. It's his problem. He's got to figure out how to make it work, and that freed me to do fine. And then I did fine in the movie, but. And I came in prepared. I knew my word. I knew I have to come in and know the words. If I know the words, at least I know, really know the words. I'll be fine, which is what I tell anybody who has to go do any kind of thing. Spend all the time. Fucking know it cold when you come in. But similar to you, Dom, I don't like a party. I don't like having to talk. I'm comfortable for I can talk to 10,000 people if I have to. I could literally tomorrow talk to Madison Square Garden. I would have no nerves about it. If I knew what I wanted to say, I could say it. Much easier for me than sort of at a party, one-to-one interactions and having to engage in that way.
Tough. Yeah.
That's why we chose. That's why we joined the circus, man.
Yeah. So
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Quick question.
Just for a lot of people at home that aren't in the business, you mentioned before interacting with John Malkovich. We think about the movie Rounders, obviously. When he's talking to you and the scene's not going, is he still holding that Russian accent?
No.
I don't know.
Because you know why? Because he's not fucking crazy. No. But I will say, but there are people. So I'd say I've seen this more than once. Often an actor who's British, but has to carry an American accent through the whole thing. It might just be easier for their head to speak in American English for the whole day.
So
and then when they're done,
go
back to being British, because those languages are so close. But if you're doing a big accent like that, you can just take it on and off, right, Dom? If you're doing a huge, if you're doing a Russian or a German accent, it's so far away from you that I think you could do it and then uncut, you could go right out of it or keep it in your head then. But when you're at lunch, you're not still I don't think Colonel Klink at lunch was still talking.
No, I think it's just married to that scene, those specific words.
I was kind of hoping he was yelling at craft services.
But he does it so well. He's done it so many times.
Malkovich.
Yeah, he's done the.
Yeah, I mean, he's not like Malkovich is in Billions too, playing a Russian guy, and I mean, he's been in 3 things of ours, and Dave and I have been friends with him for our whole career.
Amazing.
And he's the greatest. Yeah, and you could go up to him, he could do a huge Russian thing, and then you go up to him, and he's like, yeah, hi, what do you want to talk about? Like, no,
That's great.
Right away.
Okay,
Yeah.
you son of a
You had John Dahl direct that,
John.
who I loved him too. I had the pleasure of working with him on Ray Donovan. And how did Rounders come about?
Well, David and I wrote it, in a basement. Amy, my wife, cleared out this storage locker below our apartment building. And it had a slop sink in it and like a half a desk. True, I sat on the floor. Dave sat at this weird sort of half a desk. There was just a slop sink and that was it. We met 2 hours a day in the early morning before work. And wrote that script in 4.5 months, revised it a little bit, sent it out. It got rejected by everybody, of course, every agency. And eventually, I mean, it's a whole long thing that I've just told a lot of times in a lot of places. But so if people are tuning in because they've heard me speak, I don't want to tell the whole story again. I would just say we decided we had a list of directors we wanted. We weren't producers. We didn't have the authority to do this. But we knew that the movie company liked John Dahl. We loved him. And we knew he was on like a list of people they'd make a movie with. So we just found a way to get in a room with him and get him the script. He said he'd do it. And we called them and we said, hey, we got John Dahl. And it was great because then he said to us, I want you guys on set every day. And that was really our film school because we had not gone to film school. And so John would talk to us about lenses and he would talk to us about staging and how to talk to an actor. And he wasn't talking to us all day long. But he would give us a few minutes here and there. And then he would tell us things like, take the cinematographer at lunchtime. We break for lunch. Go sit next to the cinematographer and ask that guy why he does what he does. Go talk to the sound man. Figure out why they do that. And it was great because we were the writers of the movie, because we'd become friends with the actors in the movie, we taught them all poker. We were treated very well, and we came into it with a very open, curious attitude, and so we really learned a lot about how to make stuff by making that movie. And John gave us that gift. Really, he could have not invited us in, and instead he fully invited us in.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
It's not always the case, but he was a pleasure to work with. Really.
Well, he's very simple in his approach, right, Dom? He doesn't speak. He doesn't say a lot of bullshit. He just sort of
lets you act.
He does, right?
He lets you act.
Yeah.
Big difference. Doesn't try to micromanage you. Wants you to put it up on his feet. And I was doing some really heavy material in that particular episode, and he just left me alone, man.
Yeah. Is that something that as you got deeper into this career, it became easier to not look for affirmation from the director, to just know that if they're not coming up to you, you're in the pocket and you're getting it done? Because I know some directors will be very effusive. Hey, that was great. Fucking killed it. But some directors, they're just trying to solve problems. They don't want to get in your way. If you're good, okay, that's something I don't have to worry about. I'm going to go deal with this person over here. I'm going to talk to them. And I've had some actors I know feel like, well, I need a little pat on the head. Did it take you time to learn I don't need a pat on the head? If they don't say shit to me, I'm good? Or were you always okay?
Yeah, but there's always, in the beginning, it's, you kind of like, I need it, because unlike you, I didn't go to film school. I didn't go to acting school. I was like, oh shit, I'm still like, I even texted you. I'm like, how did that come out? How did that scene come out? After the fact, not when I'm actually shooting it. But each director has their own way of doing things. For instance, you see them at Crafty, or you see them in the morning, or you see them getting out of the makeup chair and say, hey man, it's good stuff yesterday.
Right.
But they didn't tell you that. They didn't tell you a fucking thing when you were shooting it. You know? But John, when I was shooting that scene, he would come, he's like, okay. He would just say, okay. Because he'd let me be.
Right.
I didn't move. I didn't move off that couch. Cameras, they were changing cameras, lighting. This person, putting the drinks on the table. I did not move. He did not say, hey, Dom. He kind of protected. I think what he probably said was, just fucking stay clear of him.
Right.
Work around him.
How about Marty? How does Marty give direction? Or how did he give you direction?
Marty kind of Marty goes, Marty's something like this. So we're shooting a scene, and I have a lot of the dialogue in the scene with Bob and Joe, and he'll come up and say, hey, okay. So what do you think, Bob? You think we'll do what, 3 in a row, 4 in a row? And I'm thinking to myself, hold on, De Niro doesn't have any fucking lines. He doesn't have any lines in this scene. I have all the lines. And you know what? He didn't give me any notes, man.
Right.
Now that I think of it, he didn't give me any notes. It was just, let's go again. Let's do 2 in a row. Let's do 3 in a row.
And he would move the camera, whether he was on Bob, or then he would move the camera in closer to you, or whatever the thing was.
Oh, he wouldn't, the scene that I'm doing with Joe, it's my first day of work, big banquet hall. First time meeting Joe, doing the scene with him, and the camera is on the tracks, comes, and then it just swings, and it's right here.
And where's Joe? Where's Joe in that?
Joe's like, where, if I was looking at Joe's right here.
So it's coming into like 3/4 on you, like a 3/4 on you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like dude,
Yeah.
like right here, and I'm, whatever, and I'm doing the scene, but I didn't know that was gonna happen.
Right.
I didn't even see it in the blind. He's probably said, go closer, go closer. Who knows what he's doing, because he couldn't be in the room because of the smoke machines.
Right. The asthma.
So he had to be someplace else.
What was Joe's energy like before you started?
Joe's everything to me, man. Joe's my De Niro. You know,
Yeah, he's the great. I mean, yeah, he's like, one of the greatest of his generation, for sure.
He dropped a lot of knowledge on me. He took care of me.
Oh, it's great.
He made sure that everybody knew that when I was doing a scene with him and Bob, that get the kid the chair, get him a chair as well.
Nice.
Don't.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
You want some food, Dom? He had a chef. You want some food? And he told me something. This is great. He's telling me about his story on JFK, and I said, yeah, Oliver Stone, great director. Marty, he works some really great director. No. Because Marty's not a director. He's a filmmaker.
Yeah, sure.
And Joe has a way of conveying his message, the way he speaks.
Sure.
And you feel like you could talk to him for a really long time, because he's not that guy. He's not that really rumbunctious.
Right.
He's really, I'm sure he has a short fuse, but when he was talking to me, it was like I was talking to this older guy.
I always figured that what Chaz and De Niro got out of him in Bronx Tale at the end of that movie is the closest to who he really is. When he comes in at the end of that movie and he just talks to the kid by the casket, and he just quietly, but with all of that knowledge and life, I always felt like, I bet you that's what that guy's like.
It is, Brian. That's him. It's also a guy who's very content with his career, a guy who knows what he's accomplished, a guy who really doesn't need to do it anymore.
Also, let me just say for the record, they should go back and find a way to technologically put you in Bronx Tale. It's a shame you're not in that movie. It's a crime. You would have been so good in Bronx Tale.
With my first movie.
It's a much younger version.
Oh man, that was a roller coaster.
How old were you?
I was 14.
And how did it happen? I'm sure you've told it on here, but I haven't heard it.
Yeah, I'll tell you the whole thing. So it was an open call. I'm from that neighborhood.
Wait, it's an open call, so you don't know, but you're not you have not acted ever. You're not interested.
I wanted to play for the Yankees. I was playing summer baseball, and my mom finds out from the deli guy, her son is going to read. This one's son is going to. She goes, "Why don't you go read?" I'm like, "Ma, I have blonde hair, blue eyes." It's like, go. I'm like, okay.
Are you a movie fan at this point?
Always.
So you'd seen Goodfellas,
Yeah.
You knew those guys, you knew why they mattered.
I remember watching Abbott and Costello with my dad, The Three Stooges. Movies are a very special thing for me. Music can change my mood like that. I can listen to a song and it'll put me someplace. That's the beauty that music has for me. When I watch a movie, Brian, I get lost.
Right.
I watch a movie, I think, a lot differently than the majority of the people who I watch them with, which could be frustrating because I'm like, shut up.
But Dom, all of us, that's what we do. All of us. That's what we do. That's what we do.
I could get lost and I could watch a movie 5 times and learn something. For instance, I could watch The Godfather right now and I'll learn something new.
Yeah,
I'll take
I watched
something.
Apocalypse. I watched Apocalypse.
I did too.
This week. I watched Apocalypse, and there were moments in it, and that absolutely. I've seen that movie. I just have seen that movie so many times, and then
after your tweet, and you were like, "Oh, which one should you watch first?" And I was like, "You should just watch the." I think someone should just watch it the same way we watched it.
That's what I did. I ended up putting on the original.
Right.
I showed the original one. I did.
Original.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I actually watched Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, that's up next.
Again.
Yes.
And I was blown away. I mean, I watched that, and I've seen it before. Now I watched it again, and I'm studying. Now I know the story. Now I'm studying Coppola and.
Well, I was noticing when I was watching it, and we're going to get back to your story of the thing, but I was watching, because this is interesting. This is how people who. I was just watching Duvall again after Willard says, you just knew he was going to come out of this thing untouched. And I was just watching the way Duvall's posture worked, and the way he moves. And really and I was watching it on a bunch of different levels, like him, what he was trying to convey to us, but also what he was conveying to his men. And because, he was conveying this to his men, the way that he stood, in the way that he held himself, and just watching everyone reacting to him. It was amazing. It was just amazing to me. And there were so many of those moments throughout the piece. And I was really struck this time. It was the first time I actually really understood that the chief really means to kill Willard after he's killed, when he's bringing him down to the spear, Right. It's an incredible acting moment for everybody in it. I think just blew me away. So go ahead, keep on with your story.
So there's an open call. So I mean, Brian, everybody was coming from all the boroughs to be in this movie, Robert De Niro movie.
Do you know what the part is at this point?
No, reading all these bogus sides, all these potential roles, and then it started to dwindle. And originally, the part that I was reading for was Nikki Four Eyes.
Wait, you mean they started sending people home?
Yeah, they would keep calling people back in the group
within the same day or over the course of weeks.
Weeks.
Okay.
Weeks. They would take your number, and no one had a cell
phone. And Bob is not there at this point. This is just a casting person.
No. Now, when I meet Bob, that's something else.
Right. So what happens? Yeah. So go ahead.
So it dwindles. It goes from 100 people to 75 people to 50 people. Now, they eliminated the people who could read. They eliminated the people who kind of passed the test with like these certain acting teachers that they had to like kind of filter some people. And then they said, we would like you to come into the city to Tribeca, to De Niro's office and read for De Niro, and Chaz will be there. Now, I was off book. And
what scene did you read? What scene did you go read?
I read the scene, this 45 will go shoot an elephant, and the guy driving the truck and the elephant. That I only had one scene in the movie, and so Chaz always tells this story. Chaz goes, "Hey, kid, you need time. You need time." De Niro's behind him on the phone, finishing up a phone call. Chaz meets me at the door as soon as I get in the office. Hey, kid, you need time? Don't worry. You could read it off the paper and everything. And I'm like, no, come on. I'm ready to go.
Are you shitting bricks or you confident?
No. Not shit. No,
well, of course,
nothing.
Chaz doesn't really mean anything yet. Like, you don't know. I'm saying after the movie, Chaz meant everything, but he doesn't mean anything yet to you.
But right. De Niro, I wasn't nervous even that De Niro was there.
Really?
Yeah, the importance didn't register to me.
That's great.
Yeah, it worked. I wish I could do that now. So he's like, let's do the scene. And I'm like, okay, and I'm shooting it off. And then he goes, say what you want. Say what you want too. Say what's on the paper, but then also say what you want. Okay. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, it'll shoot, it'll shoot the truck and the driver too. It'll fucking kill everybody. I'm using all these. I go home and they call my mom for permission for me to be in the movie. And I got the movie. My mom took the money that I made and made me join the union. I've said that a few times. And yeah, it's like, what? And it's like, no, you never know. You never know.
You joined SAG right then.
When it was like $400.
That time you were in. That's great, though.
Yeah, and it wasn't until 1997, 98, where the location manager that worked on a Bronx Tale, who was going to NYU at that time, wrote a film called Kiss Me Guido, which was a comedy.
I know that film. Right, I know it. I don't remember it now. I remember when it came out and everything.
And I fell in love with acting doing that film.
Had you worked from Bronx Tale till then?
No. I would get called like a Law and Order here. You know, I don't even know who was submitting me. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have a manager. I guess I was just on part of a list. And this particular person said, listen, you know, I can't say I could give you this part. I would like you to come in and read for this part. And it was the best friend of the lead. And what was the beauty about making that, and Tony, I'm speaking of Tony Vitale, who is a dear friend now. The beauty of making that movie was going out every week, finding a hall, and reading for investors, raising our own money.
Yeah.
And we wind up raising like $500,000.
I remember the whole thing. I can picture the poster. How old were you then?
Oh, wow. 90, 96, 97. I had to be about 17 years old.
So it was a few years after Bronx Tale.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Just a few years of, you know, I was doing like, I did a little part in a lot of indie movies.
Sure.
You know, really, really guerrilla. And then this came out, and we had a viewing because Paramount wound up distributing the movie. I'm at the screening, and a lady from Writers and Artists, Linda Kalagna, God rest her soul, she passed away, but she handed me her card. Says, call me tomorrow.
Oh, that's great.
And I had an agent, and then it's one thing. People ask me, how did it happen? What do I need to do? And I don't have
There's no answer. No, there's no answer.
It's hard.
Here's my question: when did you start telling people when they said, "Hey, I'm Pete. I'm a painter. I'm Bobby, and I drive a truck." When did you say, "Yeah, I'm Dom, and I'm an actor"? That's what I do.
When I didn't have to do anything else, probably after The Wire.
Right. Oh, not until after The Wire? Wow.
Yeah.
Like while you were on The Wire.
Yeah, you know, I would say they like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm on a TV show.
Right.
It was.
That's amazing. So you wouldn't have answered that question. I mean, you've done so many things before The Wire. You wouldn't have answered the question.
I had so many jobs, Brian. I took every job I possibly could, knowing that I could walk away if someone said, "Hey, you have an audition."
Sure.
I've walked off jobs like, you're not going to let me out. I really need to go do this.
Really? Your whole approach was that you had the Neil McCauley approach? You drop anything and...
I did. I remember they were pouring concrete one time. And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I told you, I got to be in Manhattan at 2:00.
No, it is true when this shit happens, because also part of it is you try to distract yourself at the beginning of these careers. You try to do anything you can not to just obsess about the career part. Am I going to get the next thing, or what's going to happen? And I remember waiting one time, like I get in weird, so I'll start playing guitar for a while, or I'll start playing a sport. Then I'll get upset because you're waiting for the phone to ring, especially not in the last long bunch of years, but early in your career, because you got the phone has to, you do your work. For me, I'll write a thing, but then you got to wait for it to get financed. And I do remember once I was going to this public golf course on Long Island. I forget the name of it right now, but it's off Northern Boulevard. And I was going to this public golf course like every day because we were supposed to get word, and I was like trying to get good. And I remember I would like go hit, hundreds of balls and then on the putting green. And I literally got this call, and I was like on like the 13th hole of this golf course or something. And Dave called me and he's like, hey, they're fucking greenlighting the movie. We're going to start pre-production. And I swear to God, dude, I fucking put the club in the bag on the shoulder, and just walked off the course to my car because that was it. I was done. I was like, that's the end. Because none of that mattered. That was just to like fucking fool myself or whatever. I literally put the clubs in the bag and walked right off the golf course into the car. And I knew I remember saying to my wife, like, I'm not going to, I put them down in the garage. I was like, I'm not going to pick these up for like 2 years. This is like 2 years till I'm going to pick these up again. Well, it was like, that's what I'm going,
I still, to this day, I'll do an audition. I'll send it out, or I'll go in and I'll let a day go by. I call the manager and then Mike, hey Mike, what's going on? Like, got a call in, waiting to see. You know the spiel. And okay. So now if I didn't get it, I want to know. But
you have to know. But also, even though I'm sure other guys have told you
I
this,
want to know.
But here's what you have to know. There are times that, so I'm the guy who has to make that decision, right? Me and Dave. But there are times I might not be able to be in the right head to watch the audition for this part for 8 days after you do the audition. Like, it might truly be 8 days before I watch the audition.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to watch it in a rush. I'm not going to watch it when I can't give the actors the time because they put the thing in. I'm going to make sure, okay, when do we need to have this role cast by? All right, maybe the casting director, Allison Ashton, who I love and respect, and I take her word, but still, we're going to watch. If she says, Allison's you got to see this thing now, I'll go, all right, let's clear out my schedule. Well, basically, it's going to be a Sunday. I'm going to write someone on my team like, all right, send me the links to all the auditions. I'm going to now watch. And that might be 10 days after you did the thing. It has not, and unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get that answer.
Yeah.
And also, we might have just cast somebody who looks like you in 2 roles in a row, and we got to do something else for this part because we want someone taller than you, or we decided to make it. Just has, it just has nothing to, especially when you're someone like a top professional like you are. It's just like, are they looking for that in that moment, or are they looking for something else in that moment?
Here's the crazy thing about this. This is how sick I am. It's not whether I could wait 10 days for you to tell me. It's that when I finally get the answer and the answer is no, I want to know why. That's the weird thing with me.
Yeah, but the weirdest thing is,
and no one could ever answer that question.
You never get a why.
Well, they can answer it. No, there are times you could answer it.
A casting director is never going to answer that.
No, a casting director is never going to answer it, right? But there are times that honestly the answer could be, I'll tell you what it often is. Somebody else came in and they just were the version of it in my head.
Yeah.
They added to it. They were what was in my head. It doesn't mean they were better. They said the words in the rhythm that was in my imagination.
Right.
That's just magic though.
And
often that's why you'll call somebody back, right? And you'll go, well, here's what I was thinking. Now, on the other hand, Dom, as you know, we wrote the part for you in our show and named the guy Dom. I mean, we wrote it for you. There's no auditioning. We were like, we want Lombardozzi to play this. And we called you. We were like, we're sending you a thing.
Yeah.
So that has to also happen where like, all right, someone knows what I do when they reach out for me. So
it's great.
When you're
it's a great feeling. I got to be honest. It's a great feeling when a person like you who runs a show, a successful show, a well-oiled machine. Because when I stepped on the set of Billions, and this is the difficult part of being a guest star on a show. You better know your fucking lines.
Oh, yeah.
You better know your lines. Because chances are you're walking into something that's a well-oiled machine. Everybody knows how everybody else works. You know what they don't know? what you're doing.
Yeah.
You have to make decisions really quick. That's why when I work with David, when on the last episode, probably the one that you're cutting right now.
Yeah. When you and Constable together, yeah.
Yes. So generous.
Oh yeah, he's the best.
And it was so easy. We're saying, why is this easy? Why haven't we worked together? We worked on something together, but we never actually physically worked together.
Well, he was on The Wire also, but you guys didn't have scenes together. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just there are giving actors. There are actors who work against you, and there's actors who work with you.
Our set, we really don't have actors who work against you. Our set, we have.
I'm sure you've been around that.
Our actors are incredibly generous and beautiful to each other, and it's a really important part of the whole thing. Is that vibe? It
should not be combative. You know, I mean,
the only time Dave and I ever get chippy is if someone comes in unprepared, because Paul's prepared and Damien's prepared and Maggie's prepared and Asia's prepared and Constable's prepared, and so you better. Daniel Breaker's prepared. You better walk on that set ready to fucking go. Have your words. Know the words. The rest of it, look, you could come in and have a take on the performance. That's okay. Well, come in there though and respect everybody enough to know the shit.
Respect it, yeah. My thing is always respect the person who sat down and wrote this, who had the discipline to actually sit down and create this.
But it's also because you can find if you know the words and you're not stressing for the words.
Well, that's
then you can find the character. But look, Brando's the exception, but Brando was so loose and easy, it didn't matter. He could say any words. It doesn't matter because he's so comfortable, right? He's so just embodies it that the words almost don't matter. But not everybody's Marlon Brando.
Swallow the fly. It's so good. But these guys, since COVID, since we partnered up and we're doing the podcast, and they became really close to me, my buddies, they helped me read for some auditions because that's my process.
Sure.
I need to hear it out loud. I need to keep running it and running it and running it. And you guys know, I need to know all the words. Once I know all the words, I could play. There's a difference between memorizing lines and knowing lines. It's a big difference. And so you're so right. When you come onto those sets, you have to know everything. And then they'll let you know how much you can play. And you're free.
That gives you the freedom. It gives you the freedom.
And that's where you take all the direction. I want to talk about, I know you got to go. Godfather 2, your favorite film?
Yeah, I think if I have to pick a movie that I think is the best movie ever made, I think that's the best movie ever made. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
I'm right there.
But I mean, favorite switches around. Like The Godfather 2 is not a really great time. You know, if it's like my favorite movie is probably, some kind of Coen Brothers movie or a Quentin movie or a Spike Lee movie where it's like a little funnier also while it's super intense. But I mean, I've watched The Godfather 2 more than any other movie. Because as a storyteller, that movie's a miraculous thing. I don't even understand how. Look, we're talking about Apocalypse. I mean, what Francis Ford Coppola did, as many times as people want to talk about it, I mean, what he did making those movies, The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather 2, and Apocalypse Now, it's kind of like an unequaled thing in a way.
Insanity.
And every part of those movies is just, you can't understand how
it's gripping.
Somebody achieved that. Godfather 2, though, I look at that scene, the scene I watch over and over is, Michael and Fredo, the banana daiquiri scene, Michael and Fredo outside in the cafe.
Yeah.
And when you look at the way Pacino plays that scene, the way he's studying Fredo, you miss that. The first 10 times you watch it, you miss the thing that's interrogation scene. That scene is an interrogation scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't play it so that it's obvious to Fredo it's an interrogation scene. But that's an interrogation scene. He is watching Fredo's every reaction to everything he says.
And
Fredo's confession of guilt is when he says, why didn't we do this more? That's Fredo's confession of guilt, is why couldn't we been like this? That's, go ahead.
I think the beauty of it is that Fredo's the only person in the movie who doesn't know he's being interrogated all the time by Michael.
That's funny. Right.
Yeah.
But I think the average viewer does not understand watching that movie most of the time that that's an interrogation scene, for instance. It's two brothers connecting. You don't understand that the whole reason he has Fredo bring the $2 million is so that they're all there. You know, it's just perfectly constructed. It's an amazingly constructed.
Why did we do more things like this before?
Well, it's also beautifully shot. But if you notice, everybody who's full of sin.
Yes.
The way they lit, usually black underneath.
Well, Gordon
the eyes.
Willis, all that top lighting
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I mean, Gordon Willis was obviously another master, and I mean, all the President's Men. It's another one of the movies I've watched the most in my life. Like I've watched that movie, just really, it's hard to even tell you how many times. Gordon Willis also shot that.
I think movies from 66, 67 to 78 before Star Wars. Why?
He always got to go there.
No, but but I'm going to disagree because I'm going to say I understand your point, but I'm going to say there are a lot of movies now that are
fantastic.
Look,
Shawshank.
Yeah, but look at Bastards. I mean, for me, Bastards is as good a movie as you can make.
Yeah.
And
so good.
I would say I could make the argument that that's my favorite movie. Again, I don't think it's better. I love Quentin. Quentin, obviously, I'm sure you heard my podcast with him. Yeah. Quentin and I are, I'm always careful saying friends, but obviously I know Quentin and we have some mutual respect. He's a hero to me creatively as an artist. Bastards is arguably my favorite movie. The Coen Brothers movies, I could tell you 7 of those movies that are like my favorite movie, because favorite depends on the state of mind you're in at a given moment. Where, and I'll say also, I was thinking yesterday, and this is the way movie freaks talk, but I was thinking about character introductions, and I was thinking, there's this scene in Charlie Wilson's War with John Slattery and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
When they have that argument that ends in Philip Seymour Hoffman breaking the thing. That is one of the greatest scenes in the history of cinema, of just two guys going at each other. And
does he call him an infant?
Yeah, the whole thing. Gravely, I am never ever sick at sea, right? And that scene, and let's talk about the many ways in which you're a douchebag, right? Yeah. That scene, which he says, that scene for me, I could watch that scene 100 times, because the writing, the acting, the directing, every single, the way Slattery flicks his fucking cigarette.
Yeah.
Every single thing in that scene is just immaculate. It's just perfect. And that movie's not perfect. I can't go watch that movie over and over again, but I spot check that movie. I watch that movie sometimes. Because I want to see.
That's kind of how I feel about The Master, because the movie itself isn't amazing entirely, but those scenes between Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman, those dialogue scenes back and forth when they're talking about just drinking.
But I think that movie's a masterpiece.
Do you really?
It's that movie's a masterpiece.
I think
for
it's
me,
a
I saw that
thing.
movie in the theater the day it came out, and
I think it's PTA's favorite film that he's made.
That movie, The Master, destroyed me. I walked around the city for just hours and hours lost, and that movie destroyed me, man. I mean, my favorite PTA movie is the one. What's the title, guys?
There'll Be Blood.
No, I mean, I love that. No, it's the one with Daniel Day-Lewis making the clothes.
The Taylor.
The Taylor, yeah.
Taylor.
Whatever. No, it's called something else. I just am literally blanking on the title.
The last
right
one
now.
He did?
No, 2 movies ago. It's Daniel Day-Lewis, and it's just the most beautiful movie.
Supposedly Daniel Day-Lewis's last film, right before he
perhaps.
retired. Yeah.
But I think The Master is incredible. But I know what you mean. Yes, you can watch certain scenes in that. I think The Master is hard to watch because it's so disturbing. I understand why you say that. It's just because to go through all that is just very unfun. It's a punishing. Yeah. Tree of Life. I love Tree of Life, the Terrence Malick movie. But I don't that's one of my favorite experiences of seeing a movie in a theater. But I watched that movie one time. I don't want to put myself through that experience. Maybe I'll watch this.
Movies.
Was it Phantom Thread?
Yeah.
Phantom Thread.
Love that movie.
And with that, Brian Koppelman, people. Brian,
This was
thank
great
you so
fun.
much, man.
All the best. I hope to see you soon.
You
Thanks,
too.
Brian.
Stay
I'll
well,
let you
my
know
friend.
about that audition in 3 weeks. Don't worry about it.
Bye.